Different. It's a conversation about leadership, community, resilience, and purpose. But it's also a conversation rooted in real life. We're honored to be joined by two Vistage chairs, Randy Fields and Maryanne Elliott. Vistage has a worldwide membership of 44,000 people, and we will further define what Vistage is during this podcast. Randy has won the award for top Vistage chair in the world for the last 3 years. And I understand that Vistage chairs, there are 900 of them total, and Randy gets the top award 3 years in a row. That's pretty darn good. He has groups of people with whom he works, which include over 100 people, and it's about 10 groups, is my understanding. And Maryanne is fairly new to the Vistage scene. She has 3 groups, and she's working with a total of 47 people. Today, we're talking about the highs and lows of what CEOs experience day to day and how these coaches help them through. We are also discussing a very personal journey as to how Maryanne has joined Vistage. Maryanne, Randy, thank you very much for trusting us with this conversation, and we're grateful to have you here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jim. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Okay, Randy, Maryanne, both of you, one of you, give our audience a background on your careers, actually for both of you, on how you got to be Vistage chairs, but what you all did in previous lives.
Yeah. Well, my background has primarily come through the organizational psychology track. So I have spent years in leadership development, working in the coaching and development space. So I really had an opportunity to look close up at what really makes people tick, what drives them. And so that's been a great view for me in my career to bring to Vistage.
Mm-hmm. Great. Randy, what about you?
Sir. You know, I was a Vistage member myself. I had 2 different companies. I was in the spinal implant business, orthopedic implant distribution business for about 30 years. And a part of my leadership development was joining a Vistage group, and was a Vistage member of my own group for about 16 years. And then in 2013, I started my first Vistage group.
Okay, super. All right. So for our listeners who are really not familiar with Vistage, tell us a little bit about it. What is Vistage?
Great question. Vistage is the world's largest CEO peer group organization. So it takes leadership development at all different levels and applies it to different companies. So a Vistage group can be either a CEO, president, founder of a company. That's called the CEO group. And then we have a key executive group, and that typically is for the number 2, number 3, number 4 key executive for that CEO. And then we have 2 other development groups called emerging leaders. And that is a 2-year track of leadership development that's been an absolutely fantastic program. And then once you graduate from that, you go into it's called advanced leaders. And that's typically a 2 to 4 year program, depending upon the person and where their skill set is. So we create a continuum of learning for young leaders within organizations. Now, there's a couple other groups that Vistage has in its portfolio of products. One's called the Vistage Inside Group. That's typically for larger corporations where you can work with a hand select group of executives from a particular company, or one company might have 16 presidents in 16 different states, and then that group will meet as a Vistage group in a particular community, 3 to 4 times a year. Or there's also a small business group, which that's for the companies typically $1 to about $5 million. And then there's also the Trusted Advisor Group, which really is kind of for accountants, CPAs, smaller businesses if you want to be in a small business group.
Okay, wide-ranging. So why is Vistage different than other peer groups and business networks?
Vistage is different in that it brings together peers that are in non-competing industries. And it really is that safe space to talk about those business issues. Executive isolation is real, and where do you go? And home can get tiring. You have to be careful about who you talk to, what at work. And so to me, Vistage, kind of the why Vistage is a lot of it is around trust and the peer relationship that you develop, that you're really able to challenge perspectives and think through issues, and ultimately make better decisions.
Okay. So are there any common misconceptions about CEO coaching that you wish people really understood better?
It's been interesting, Jim, through this journey over the last 13, 14 years in doing leadership development, that a lot of the executives join a Vistage group for the business side of it and the impact that it has personally from a balance standpoint of life, because most executives don't have any problem working long hours because they love what they do. And one of the challenges we have as chairs is to make sure that you're living a balanced life. So that's been one of the big surprises. There were misconceptions. A lot of people will say, well, I joined the group for this, and it really was all about the business. And then the impact it had on me personally has been huge.
Interesting. Okay. So obviously people are discussing confidential information about their companies. How do you handle confidentiality?
Well, I've been leading groups for a long time, and currently in Vistage, it has just never been an issue because everybody's got skin in the game, right? Everybody is that's part of what it takes to be a fit in a group. We want learners. We want people that are open-minded. They've got humility. And so when you have a group and you're willing to be vulnerable and show up and say, hey, here's what I'm waking up at 2 a.m. Here's where I have this decision, that I think there's, everybody is sharing. And so that confidentiality has a bit of a shared responsibility, if you will.
I got you. Okay. All right. So give me this one belief about leadership that you held early on in your career that you've completely changed your mind about.
It's a great question. For me personally, I always felt like as a young leader that I had to get it right every single time. And I've learned that failure is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So too many people think, well, I can't make any mistakes. Well, gray hair comes from wisdom. Wisdom comes from mistakes.
Very good point. Very good point.
I would also add that I believe that leadership and leaders looked and acted a certain way. Mm-hmm. And as I've grown myself, as I've worked with a lot of leaders, I have seen so many different shapes and sizes and ways of doing things that work. And so I see that authenticity playing a bigger and bigger role because leadership is all about relationships and making an impact. And so if you're clear with your values and you know who you are, that clarity can really have a positive impact on people. And I think that a lot of that's driven by authenticity.
Very good. Well, my father always said that experience is the best teacher and someone else's is the cheapest. And so I think there's a lot of truth to that. I know I've made plenty of mistakes in my career, and you do learn from them. Right. And it's frustrating sometimes because you think, but I've always found one thing to be true, and that is if my gut is telling me that it feels wrong, follow your gut.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
100% of the time when I haven't, I've made the mistake. Right?
Wise
That's so
words.
true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. All right. So Maryanne, your connection to Vistage comes from a very personal place. Can you tell us your story and how you became involved?
I can. Well, I went through some major life changes in April of 2023. And at that time, I was working primarily in a virtual manner, clients from around the world. And, there was that day that I shut the laptop and I said, I want to do something different. I want to do something that has community. I want to do something that's collaborative, that works with leaders who are making a real impact in our community. And so I was fortunate and honored enough to connect with Randy Fields, and that door opened with Vistage. But it did come from a very personal place. I believe that loss really compresses time for us. And not only is it precious, but it's finite. And although that may seem scary, for me, it was clarifying. And so when I looked at the choices that I had and the things that I wanted in my life, Vistage is a choice I'm very intentionally making. I feel very honored to be a part because it allows me to be in a thoughtful leadership community.
So, Maryanne, you mentioned you had a loss. Tell me about that loss. What can you tell us about what happened?
Sure, Jim. I can tell you the unthinkable happened on April 10th, 2023. It was the day after Easter, and we'd had a wonderful day with family and church and watching the Masters. And I remember seeing him leave early in the morning, my husband, Tommy, and the sun was shining. And the last thing I said to him was, "You're so handsome." And I never saw him again. I was on a Zoom meeting probably an hour later, and I continued to get calls and pings and so forth that I ignored. And finally, they became so interruptive, I had to pay attention to them. And so on that day, there was a shooter at Old National Bank that injured 9 and took the lives of 5 people. And, 3 weeks before, in several of my groups, I'd held a moment of silence for the Covenant School in Nashville, not thinking that would happen to you. It just, I think that shock of really trying to just figure that out of what happened and then how to put those pieces back together, is a long process, a long, painful process. I don't think that grief, that there's any lesson or silver lining or anything that you need or should do. You don't need to earn a gold star. You need to get through it. And so I think for me, it has informed a perspective of life that's what led me to Vistage, is to say, how do I want this precious time that I have left? How do I want that to count the most? So this is work for me. It is a profession, but it also for me is very much about calling. It's very much about purpose. That I want to be in meaningful relationships to not only that executive or founder or key executive, but to their teams and to their families. And so I am coming to this in a place of meaning that has largely been shaped by that event.
I understand. It's a terrible event. Tommy's a great guy. And
Thank
he was
you.
in that conference room at the wrong place at the wrong time.
He was. Well, he was never there. He was always out and about. So part of trying to put the pieces together. But we had a very happy relationship, a very loving relationship. And in the almost 3 years of processing it, that's been one piece that I have leaned on, is the just the love that we had.
Right.
Yeah.
So
because grief is love.
That's right. So Tommy, looking at you today, what do you think he would say?
Oh, he'd be like, "You go, girl." He was always a supporter of me. I would have crazy ideas. I'd have serious ideas. I have 1,000 ideas. And I think he got a kick out of supporting me. So he whatever I want, he would be supportive of.
I'm sure of that. Have you learned anything about yourself that you didn't know before during this?
Oh my, yes. I'm a learner, but there is nothing like life to teach you things about yourself. I would say learning to pivot. I think for everybody, I'm not different. We all have things that are coming at us that we don't want, that we figure out. And I think it's then how to pivot. And I would say for me, friends, community, people that believe in you and see things that you may not see in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How we come together and lift one another up is part of that resiliency. I think sometimes we have a definition of resiliency as very individual. It's kind of, I look inside, I get the grit inside, and I, kind of get really fierce on the inside. And I would say that a part of that resilience is, and that pivot that happens, is looking to people who can support you. And that, there are things, when things happen, that you can't see at that time, that have the opportunity of unfolding in a way that is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what are some of the issues you're seeing right now that are showing up in the lives of CEOs? For example, is it finding talent? Is it disruption from AI? Is it political controversy? What are you all seeing from CEOs?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll move on.
It's I think AI, everybody's trying to figure out AI. We had at the Chair World that I was just attending in San Diego, we had several breakouts on AI. And there's a lot of money being thrown at AI right now, especially from a private equity standpoint and all these new startups. And it really is not proving out to be what everybody says it's going to be. Everybody's trying to figure out exactly how to use it. It's created a lot of work, but where is the flow through into, input, the output of work from a worker standpoint? So I think that's one of the things that companies are trying to figure out. That's a real big issue. I think this concept of working remotely and then coming back in, that's been a real big challenge for most of my clients over the last 2.5 years. And it's been interesting to see where some companies say, well, I can't get people to work remotely. I can't get people to work at all, right? And then I've got other companies that say, if you're going to work, you're going to be here in the office 8 to 5. So it's just really kind of what the expectation is from the company standpoint, from whether you're working remotely or whether you're actually in person in the particular companies, and sort of the standard set. We see that most of the businesses are pulling people back into the office, which I find very interesting.
Are you seeing pushback from the employees in a lot of cases, or is it kind of welcome?
I think both are going on.
Okay.
I think some people, they choose not to work at a company that says you're going to be butts in seats. Mm-hmm. I've got a client here in town that 80% of their workforce is remote, and they say they can't get people to come in. And then their competitor across town has all 110 people in seats in the office. So it's kind of interesting to see the owner's stance on remote work versus in-person work.
Yeah. When after COVID rolled through and we were coming back into the office and working, I looked at our CFO and I said, I don't know how companies do this remotely, because if I need to talk to you guys, I just kind of gather you around, or we all just or you need to talk to me, we just get it done right then. And if you are remote, well, you have to set a meeting, and it takes time, and who's available, and this and that, and are they sitting in their pajamas? Are they really engaged? All that. So I, call me old school, but I'm more of a believer of being in the office and face to face and having conversations with people and having conversations with clients face to face. Yeah.
I think that in today's world, and especially like I'm a big Adam Grant person right now, love a lot of his books and where his mindset is, and it's about bringing people back in. Mm-hmm. And having people there, because if you want to progress and move up in a company, people have to know who you are and how you act and react in certain situations in person. So
yeah, I agree.
And there is research coming out around the impact of mentoring, both formal and informal mentoring, that's much more challenging in a hybrid or remote work environment.
Yeah, true. A friend of mine, friend of a friend actually, is working at a large company here in Louisville, which I won't name, and they are allowed to work remotely if they want to. And so the person does, and they said, I'd really rather be in the office, but my boss is not in the office. And so if my boss isn't there, then I'm not going to get noticed for what I'm doing, so I may as well stay home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so... Anyway, so are there any emotional or psychological challenges that you're seeing that are most common with CEOs today?
I'm seeing a good bit of burnout. Mm-hmm. And I think to the point made earlier by Randy, how do executives really block their time, block their vacation time? Randy's always so good about that. And to really refill and replenish. Because the speed of information and the pressure that's on them, what they're carrying on their backs is significant. So yeah, I think for me, when I think about emotional or psychological impact, it comes down to a personal burnout and a personal replenishment that is so helpful. I'm going to say helpful, it's even necessary.
Yeah.
When I start working with, let's say, a new company or a new executive from a company that's in one of my groups, I'm always amazed at, and I've got one person in mind right now that when I first sat down with him, he had not been on vacation in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And there was total burnout going on. He just didn't realize what it was.
Yeah.
And my challenge for all of my executives is you've got to be gone at least a week a quarter. And for my key executives that are working for the companies, sometimes they don't have that much time off, but at least plan something so you can get away. If you really look at it, and there's tons of studies around this, I was talking with a young man yesterday who was working almost till 7 or 8 o'clock every night. And I said, those last 3 hours after 5 o'clock aren't really beneficial to you or to the company. You'll be better if you come back tomorrow morning and are fresh.
Interesting. So, it leads me to the next question here is how do you balance coaching the person versus coaching the problem?
Well, they're integrated.
Yep.
Right. They are. That's challenging to do in one perspective. However, when you're coaching the person, you're coaching assumptions, beliefs, paradigms, the way they look at the world that inform the business problem. So when you coach the person, to me, that can have a more sustainable impact than focusing on the problem.
Interesting. Yeah. You have any comments on that?
Well, again, I agree with everything Maryanne just said. I think it is understanding who the person is and what makes them tick. Mm-hmm. And it's all intertwined from a personal standpoint, professional standpoint. How do we find the balance in that person and make sure that we're, part of our job is to disagree with you as a leader and to challenge your way of thinking. If you've got an executive coach who is agreeing with everything you're saying, then you've got a bad coach. Our job is to, in all honesty, really, I'll probably most of the time take the opposite viewpoint just to challenge your way of thinking. Even though I might agree with you, I'm going to challenge that way of thinking just so we can get to the right spot.
Okay. So when you look back on success with someone you have coached, what concrete outcome or outcomes have changed for the CEO and for the business?
Okay.
That makes sense?
I've got a couple examples. One was the person I just talked about who had not been on vacation. And he was too much in his business and not on his business, because really most leaders are working in the business and not on the business. They're down in the weeds too far. This individual was just grinding it every day and had not been on vacation with his family or with his daughters. And he now is very diligent on taking that 1 week a quarter. And the company has grown. So I've got another example of a client who in 2013 probably did about $35 million in revenue, and in 2025 they'll do north of $300 million. And he's working on the business and not in the business. And that's really the key. Most of the executives we start working with typically they're the hamsters on the wheel. Mm-hmm. And how do we get them off so that they've got other people that are doing the work that they need to be doing, and we're focused on them looking at from a visionary, strategic standpoint, and really developing and mentoring your team. That's one of the biggest weak links we see in this chain of command, is that people really are not mentoring and coaching their team. They say they're going to do it, but that always falls pretty far short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people, particularly if they founded the business, they're used to, working in it.
They're doers.
They're doers, mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And it's I've gotten to the point now, and I remember my dad got to this point also, where you step back and other people are doing things, they're doing it better than you, mm-hmm. in some cases. But I always like being in there and making all that happen, and it's really hard to step back and let somebody else do it.
Because it's satisfying.
Yeah.
You're good at it and you enjoy it, and
right.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my dad was saying it was so hard. He liked building buildings, being out there, going out and checking the job sites and doing this and doing that, but he knew he had to delegate that to other people in order for the company mm-hmm. to grow. And he's one time I was talking to him about it. He goes, it's just not much fun anymore. But sometimes you just have to evolve that way. Right?
Well, and I challenge my CEOs and owners, founders they have to work themselves out of a daily job.
Yeah.
Your goal is not to be the doer, right? How can you sit back and work with your team, right? It's great for me when I see an executive being that hamster on the wheel to now he's got 4 or 5 people on the executive team that he's really just coaching and mentoring and developing them, which is really cool to watch and be a part of.
Yeah. So when you're working with different CEOs, do you get feedback from other stakeholders like the board, the employees? Are you in that deeply within the company?
Well, there is the phenomenon of teams and employees can know that Vistage happened yesterday because there can be an influx of ideas and opportunities in the business. But I would say on a more serious note, those can really provide shifts that can make work easier, more effective. That's where we see improved communication. So what's being brought back can really offer those ways to improve things from a very practical perspective.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Ask me the question one more time.
So the question is, when you're working with the CEO, do you gather feedback from other people who are considered stakeholders, such as, if there's a board of directors or if there is the employees?
Right. Well, and one of the things that we have, at least within our practice here in Louisville, is that we've got most of our companies have at least 3 or 4 other people in Vistage groups. So it's always interesting to me when I hear the CEO give an update, and then the next day I have a key executive give an update. Sometimes those updates are very different. It's like the word conflict. One time I was doing an inside group for a company, and I asked how many people. We had Andy Murray come in and talked about basically conflict for us. And I asked the group, do we have conflict here? And 15 of the people in the room raised their hand and said, yes, we have conflict. Well, the CEO said, I don't think we have conflict. So we spent the next 30 minutes discussing conflict. So it's always interesting perspective, right?
Right.
So yes, we get a lot of great information, but the Vistage cone of silence is what's said in the Tuesday group stays in the Tuesday group. Mm-hmm. What's said in the Thursday key executive group or the Friday key executive group stays there. I will ask permission from that, let's say, junior executive or CFO, COO, someone like that, to maybe go challenge the CEO because their perspective is totally different sometimes. So, yes, we get that. And then I do have relationships where I'm either an advisor to the board or the board will actually reach out to me and kind of, hey, we're having this issue. What are you seeing? And then here are the areas maybe you could help coach the CEO to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tricky with confidentiality, right?
It's very tricky. And as I tell the people in the key executive groups, everything you say to me will be confidential unless you tell me you're going to start a competing company. Then you got 24 hours to go tell the owner, or I'm going to tell him.
There you go.
So,
yeah. Okay. We touched on this a little bit earlier because Maryanne had mentioned that you like working with people who are lifelong learners. Mm-hmm. So what type of CEOs do you work with well and why?
Learners for sure, like you're saying, but I would say ones that don't think they're always right. They may have bold opinions and ways of thinking at things, but they're willing to be challenged. Mm-hmm. Is one. I would say that another quality is being generous. They're willing to engage with their peer. They're willing to be givers is another one. High integrity. It's mandatory that, Randy mentioned the cone of silence. And so those that have integrity and a sense of core value and or faith is an important part. Those are some that I see.
Yeah, really to add to that, I really don't have much to add to about the type of people. I think Maryanne kind of hit that right on the head. But it is, we have a great local ice cream shop called Grader's. And as I tell people, when you've met one Vistage chair, you've met one Vistage chair. And it's like going to Grader's. I'm a huge fan of the peanut butter chip and the salted caramel, but their number one selling brand is the black raspberry chip. I'm not going to get that.
Yeah.
So that's where I think every CEO can connect with a different Vistage chair. There's different flavors of chairs. I think the core principles of what she talked about is absolutely what every Vistage chair is looking for, but it's also you've got to have a connection with the executive. I'm not going to take on a client that I don't enjoy. Life's too precious, right?
Right. Good point. Yeah. So what is one question every CEO should ask themselves once per quarter? Maryanne, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I would say where's their energy draining them? Like what's something that they're doing that feels draining?
Okay.
So for me, really staying in touch with where you are physically, mentally, spiritually, living and performing at a high level. That's the question that tends to tap into.
Okay. Randy?
I'm really big on making deposits in their team's emotional bank accounts.
Expand on that for me.
Well, I think we, too many times as executives or owners, we bankrupt our people's emotional bank accounts because we've not made enough deposits in their emotional bank account. And they have to be very specific to you can't just say, Jim, hey, great job on the last podcast. Hey, Jim, it was a great question because you asked about the P&L numbers from 2024 versus 2025. Whatever the issue was for that person, how can it be very specific to make a deposit in their bank account? And too many leaders bankrupt their people.
Okay.
So how do we continue to make sure we make positive deposits in their accounts?
Okay.
And just on that note, it reminds me one of the values of Vistage for me is a culture of accountability. Because executives can have the intention of doing that, or maybe even think they're doing that. But in a regular cadence of meetings and regular structure, we can bring that to, is that happening? What does it look like? What's getting in the way? So I think accountability is a key part of the process, a Vistage process.
Okay. Is there a single habit you'd recommend to every CEO? What is a habit that you would say that they need to develop or do to make them better?
I call it MBWA. Manage by walking around. Take your cup of coffee, walk around the company before you go sit down in your office and just get a feel for the business. I think too many people, there's so much on their to-do list, on their task list, that they just go right in their office, sit down, open up the laptop, get on the computer, start powering through the paperwork versus getting a pulse of the company.
How often? Daily, monthly, weekly?
I think it's a daily thing, depending upon how big the company is. If you've got 3 people, that's going to get a little creepy.
Right.
But most of the time, if you've got a company of 2,500 and they're all in different locations around the country, that's going to be a little bit harder. But I think most people overlook that. And I think, again, it's all about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I would say mine, block your calendar.
Okay.
Block your calendar for high priority work. Block your calendar for vacations. Block your calendar for your workouts. It's how do I bring a level of proactivity and intentionality in a world that, you're drinking from a fire hose. So to me, the habit is blocking out on the calendar and then having the discipline and commitment to stick with those priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about managing by walking around. Very rarely do I get on the intercom and call somebody at the company. I'll get up and go to their office.
Right.
It's unless somebody's coming to my office for some reason and say, "Hey, you're late." Oh, sorry, I'm coming right now. But most of the time, I'll grab my cup of coffee and walk in and sit down and have the conversation with them face to face. Because it's just we have a small company, and it's just I think that's more valuable.
It's Jim. One of the companies we work with, they have one main copier in the office of about 100 employees, and it forces people to get up out of their desks to go to whatever they've printed, right? They also have a rule in the company that you can't eat at your desk. You have to go into the break room to eat. And it's interesting in today's world, we're forcing people to have connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have an epidemic of loneliness.
Right. And it's getting worse. That's
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here's some rapid fire questions as we're going to close this out. All right, best business book you recommend? Maryanne, go with you first.
Oh, goodness. I am such an avid book reader. I'm going to say the book that I'm reading now, and that's Die with Zero.
Die with Zero. I've heard about
Die
that.
with Zero by Bill Perkins, recommended to me by a Vistage member, and I'm reading that now. And it's basically optimizing your life. You know, we save and we conserve, and those are great habits. But at what point do we really look at the role of experiences? And what kind of experiences do we want to have in our life? And so we don't want to underlive, but we want to live well. And what does that mean for us?
Gotcha. Randy?
two I'm going to recommend, and this is something I always do. One is it is called Halftime, written by Bob Buford. And the book talks about going from success to significance. What are you going to be remembered for?
Mm-hmm.
Love the book. Actually got to go down to the Halftime Institute in Dallas with Bob and 17 other owners when I sold my last company in 2007 and experience about a 3-day conference on what does that mean. And that was really cool. Business book I've read recently that I love is Adam Grant's Hidden Potential, because it changed my mind on interviewing and hiring people and what to look for.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. All right. One habit that changed your productivity. Randy, I'll go with you first.
Change my voicemail every day.
Change your voicemail every day.
Every day. Different message. Every day. It's absolutely amazing the number of people that will call my phone and say, hang up, I want to listen to your voicemail. Have it count down to Christmas. I might even throw in, I wear an extra large and blue's my favorite color. Or right now, my grandbabies are on there talking about Papa's making me chocolate chip pancakes today. So again, it's a Vistage speaker, Jack Daly, challenged me to do that in 2001.
Interesting. You've been doing it ever since.
It's kind of like making your bed.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to do. First thing, you start your day off right, and it's amazing how many people go, wow, you do that every day? Yeah, it's pretty simple. It takes about 12 seconds.
Maryanne?
I think about, and the question was around productivity.
Yeah, it's one habit that changed your productivity.
That changes my productivity. Well, I think about my life in a series of dominoes. And so if I think about I want to be really productive, I am an easy one to lift up the laptop and dive in, right? Mm-hmm. I love work. I'm a high achiever driver, but over time I've recognized that the domino of prayer and meditation and working out, those are my dominoes. Mm-hmm. And so if I stand those up, then life tends to unfold in a way that I want it to, that I can live it in a way that is creative and brings my best self.
Very good.
Table.
Okay. And the best advice you've ever received?
I go back to my dad. It's be nothing but yourself. Always be you, because you're enough.
I like that. You, Randy?
My grandmother always said, just be kind to people and it will come back threefold.
Very good. Very good. Randy Fields, Maryanne Elliott, thank you very much for joining us today. And as we exit, what you're hearing is a tune that was written by my son. He is in the bluegrass music field. He works at the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame, and their band is called the Lowland Ramblers. And you can get their album anywhere you download music.